Hey, Vinyl Community, Jeff here. Wanted to do an interesting little video real quick, interesting to me at least. About a week or so ago, what was it on Sirius XM? It was either like Hair Nation or Ozzy's Boneyard, one of those two. They did a top 40 from 40 years ago. They were looking at albums from 1983, which is 40 years ago from 2023. Hard to believe time flies that much. So I kind of did a similar thing. I looked at my collection at albums from 1983 and to see what great ones there were, because it was cool hearing some of the songs on the radio that they played. And I'm like, they never play these songs, and these are great songs. But anyway, I looked through it and I thought, well, it's kind of tough. There's a lot of great releases in 1983. So I kind of limited it. I said, let's look at bands that came out in 1983. These are bands that we first discovered. Their first release came out in 1983, and that was kind of shocking to me at some points, because these bands have been with us for a long time, and I'm like, look at all these bands that really made their debut to the larger commercial world in 1983. So let's jump into this. I don't know how many I've got here. I think it's less than 20, but so I couldn't call this top 20. But here's some of the bands that we first got releases from in 1983. You got the first album from Alcatraz. Graham Bonnet, Yngwie Malmsteen, the whole thing. They went on to do quite a few great albums. This is where it all started, though. And so, where were you in 1983? Were you listening to Alcatraz? So let's just keep going. Armored Saint appeared with their first EP. Still love this EP. Love the first album that came out the following year while I was in tech school for the military. 1983 was when we first saw them. I remember ordering this through the mail, through some magazine in the back, probably a Metal Blade article or something where they were selling this. So Armored Saint made their start. Here's one I showed you the other day. Most people don't know this. Archangel. They've done like two or three albums. The singer Jeff Kanata, whatever, he went on to do quite a bit of projects. But this album, at least for me, was in my collection and very pivotal. I talked about how I used to use some of these songs for mixtapes and stuff for my current wife. Just smooth melodic AOR hard rock type stuff. Great things there. Of course, this made my top countdown on 1983, but we got the first Dio album. Most of us were familiar with him from Rainbow and from Black Sabbath, but this is when we first got the beginning of an amazing career as the band Dio, and it was all in 1983. So we also saw the first release from Dokken. Now, sure, they had some self-release stuff from earlier stuff under Don Dokken's name. There was a version of this under Don Dokken, but as far as the normal world, the more of a mass audience, the first Dokken Breaking the Chains album came out to us in 1983. And I was there. I remember I bought it. I bought it just because it looked cool on the back. I was buying bands just because they looked cool. So I grabbed that one. I admit I did not get this one in 1983. I picked up their second album first in 1984, but 1983 is the first release from Exciter, and they have went on to do quite a bit of great stuff in the thrash field. Love this album, love the second album, but that I did discover them in the second album the following year. But that was when they got it started. We saw the first Fastway album, Fast Eddie Clarke, Pete Wave, UFO. By the time the album came out, they weren't really as involved, but this is such a great album. Still one of my favorite albums to this day, and they've went on to do quite a few great albums over the years. So, love that one. Heavy Petting, UK band, supposed to be touted as the next big thing like Def Leppard, and they have the chops and they have the sound, but for some reason it just never took off. Syrupy sweet, melodic, hard rock and metal of the day. Still love the band. They put out a couple great releases, and this is their first one. They appeared in 1983 for us. We'd heard of her before, but Lita Ford made her first debut post Runaways hard rock and solo project is when we saw her in 1983. This is not the cover I originally got. This is a later reissue of the cover, but just remember buying this album. Didn't know a whole lot about the Runaways at the time, but got a girl in the front of a album ripping a guitar apart and blood and stuff and chains, and so yeah, we bought it. It was great, loved it. And of course, we discovered Metallica this year. I bought this album when it came out just because of the way it looked. Didn't have a clue what the music was. Got into it, loved it, fell in love with it. Still one of my favorite albums to this day. But yeah, 1983, 40 years ago. Metallica is still going strong. Martial Law by Obsession, and a little EP from a California band. Mike Viscara on vocals. Went on to do a lot of great stuff. Has been a singer for Loudness and Malmsteen, and oh, he's done so much stuff. I buy so much stuff from him. He's got a great voice, but Obsession is where it started. Absolutely still love this album. Most of the stuff that followed was still great too, but this album has always had a near and dear place in my heart because I played it so much. A lot of EPs. A lot of bands had EPs. We saw that. There's an EP there. Here's another EP. Absolutely pivotal. Absolutely high water mark pretty much. Just everything on this is great. It's a classic, and they went on, of course, we know, to do great stuff and still are. But this is where it started. This is what we love. 1983, Where Were You? We also got an EP from Rat. Absolutely, absolutely love this album back in the day. This is one of the original ones that was released before they got reissued with the color cover and everything. And this is one of the ones I bought back in the day when it came out. Not this exact copy, but this exact version. Bought this back in the day based on their looks. Fell in love with it. The rest is history. Didn't discover this till the year later, but the first Sabotage album, Sirens, came out in '83. I discovered them the next year when they came out with The Dungeons Are Calling and the EP and things like that were a little bit bigger. This was a little bit on the smaller side when it came out, but I soon discovered it. And of course, they have been reissued. Absolutely love this band. Hoping they might do something again. There's talk of them doing a new album, but you know, it's been quite a while since we've heard from them. Steeler, we got to be introduced to Ron Keel. We got to introduce to Yngwie Malmsteen here. I'm assuming this was recorded earlier though, because Malmsteen by this point had already been in Alcatraz also. But this is one of those Shrapnel releases that just absolutely killer album altogether, and still just a classic. Early I think it was one of the first things Malmsteen did in America. Still classic. They played this on the radio last week, which is what blew me away to hear Tokyo Blade on the radio. When this album came out, of course, I got the US version, which was a little different. It was called Midnight Rendezvous. It was a mixture of the Midnight Rendezvous EP with this first album, kind of a compilation of songs that had come out since the first album. So the first album, I think where they're from in the UK area, probably came out, I don't know, was it 84 or was it 83? But the US release, this is when everybody else kind of discovered them, was 1984. That's when I discovered them. 1983, I'm sorry, did the earlier stuff come out earlier, or did it just get released later in America with the different songs? I don't recall. But 1983 is when it debuted. And discovered this great stuff. And then, of course, you got the whole Pete Way, Fast Way, and everything. But by this point, Pete Way had moved on to Wasted. And we got this, and I still think this is just an absolute gem. Just an absolute, almost like perfect album for this band. They've done quite a few great albums, but this one to me, still probably one of the high water marks. This, and the one or two that followed, EP and Good, Bad, and Wasted, all of that stuff was just so ingrained in me from so many times of playing these back in the day. Loved that. I didn't discover this band until '84, but we really got the debut of Rothschild at this point. Rothschild, this is kind of an EP. They had a demo out, and then they put out some tracks like this, and then later on came out with Stack Attack in '84, and that's really the pivotal album. But we really kind of got this is where we discovered them, was when the world discovered them was when this really was released in '83. So there you go. Just want to breeze through that. Where were you in '83? If you were born, where were you in '83? Did you listen to these bands? Did you discover these bands? Any other great bands you discovered? These are some of the ones I could find real quick in my collection. Until next time, I'll see you later. Rock on and rock hard.